Hello, everyone. I thought I'd make a quick video on something that I think a beginner in scouting may find useful. I had the question last week from Harley Lewis, and the main theme of the question is how do you structure your note taking? So, whether that's on a live setting at an actual game or on video, and you're wanting to create a really nice structure so that you don't get lost. It's easy to find what you were analyzing, and when you do go to write up your full report, you'll be able to easily get all the information that you included and not have to move around your report and get confused about where you put things, and also miss things as well. If you tend to write a lot of notes and there's no real approach and structure, you're going to miss things. And sometimes it might be important information that you're missing on the player. Also, it will help you to kind of strategize. So when you're actually writing things in, you'll be conscious about the next step after that, and putting things together so you can summarize some actions together, closely together. Everyone's going to be different. So you may not wish to follow what I say exactly, but you may want to take some of these little details that I use and these little strategies to help you in certain situations. So, where to start? First of all, we're going to focus more on a talent spotting approach rather than one positional specific scouting strategy. So, normally you'll have your KPIs and your requirements from the club. So that will already kind of like be like a checklist or something that you're just checking to see if the information is correct, checking to see if the player is capable of doing them things that you require. So it's a little bit easier to structure it when it's like that, because you'll have things maybe already pre-noted on your template that you're just going to just check off, or you're just going to add some detail there to help you. Whereas when you're just doing talent spotting, you don't really have any information on the player. So you could be writing a lot of notes and not really know where to put things, as you're kind of like doing an overall analysis of the player. So what should you look for to start? So there's a lot of information, how to structure it. So I'm going to show you what I do first when I'm analyzing a player, the things that I can get quite quickly, and the things that I tend to wait for as the game goes on, as the player's performing, and then how to structure it, where to put things as I see them, or as you see them. How to organize and where to put the notes. So some will be very simple and straightforward. You'll know where to put them. But there might be some times where you think, I don't really know where to put that, or I don't really know how to summarize it in a nice, easy way so that I can find it quite easily. So, for example, a player might do 2 or 3 things in one sequence, and then instead of having to write 5 or 6 sentences and losing the game, losing some analysis because you're having to look down at your pen and paper or at your computer, you'll actually be able to just quickly write a couple of things down and then get back to the game, and also in a place where you'll be able to find it. So how to separate is really important when you're doing your reports. So the first thing I think is really important is making sure that you have space. I've been at games before where I took my little pad and I just had a diagram of the pitch and I've scribbled all over it. And then when I've got home, I've actually realized that I don't know where anything is. I had too much information as well. I've written notes over the top of other notes. And I've written notes on second, third pages and then forgotten about them because I've done a second game after it, or something like that. And also you come back and you can't remember what that was attached to, what you were saying. So I do really recommend that you make sure you provide plenty of space. The second thing you want to do is you make sure that you separate things. So these are my templates. I already have them separated, so it's easy for me to put things where they're supposed to go. But if you have like a typical notepad, you're not going to have it pre-separated. So I would maybe spend some time beforehand just making a few titles just to help you order things and organize in the right way. So you might really want to think about the space to avoid the cluttering. So the first thing that I'm going to do is just check the information that I've been provided. If somebody's told me to watch a player, they may have told me like a few things about them. I would have already pre-written them down on the pad. So I'll just double check that just to make sure that the person told me about what they told me about the player is correct in that first initial moment. Now, this is quite straightforward. If you've got an official like template, it will be in the data points on that template. So it'll be very easy to check. However, if you've just written them down on a notepad, you'll probably want to cross them out and rearrange them in an order you see fit. So the second thing that I consider before I go to a game or before I even start analyzing, and I did this a long time ago, all scouts probably have done this at some point, is define your own language. Now, the reason why is because there may be points where I've written something down, I don't remember what I was saying, or I can't read what I wrote. The other factor is I might have too many words to write, so I need to find a way to make it easier to simplify it on the page. So the first thing you can do is use lots of keywords. You'll have your own keywords. You can rely on them and go back to them. So, for example, slender, athletic, light feet. So I've got 3 ways to describe a player's physical presence there or build, and that just allows me to write them down very quickly. I'll have keywords like this that I can just rely on, and I know what it is because I've written it down many times before. I don't need to wonder what I was writing. I can see what word I've written even if it's not correct. And then there might be times where you make typos as well. So if you're on the computer, you might make a typo. And then you'll be able to say what it is because it's a typical word you use. It's quite easy to understand what you've actually intended to use. Abbreviations. I always use abbreviations, whether it's for position, whether it's for an actual word, like here, accuracy, I use AC. By the time it takes me to write accuracy down, I've already spent a few seconds looking at my pad on my screen and I may have missed something. So I just write AC, passing, and then consistent. So something like that. Long range AC, passing, excellent. So I'll know what exactly I've written there just by using AC. Extremely rapid. So again, long words, try to just shorten them right down. I'll just put X rapid. And then I know I'm saying extremely rapid because I've already defined my language to begin with. So another thing that I like to include is a question mark. So if I have a doubt about something, maybe the player only showed it one time and I want to check that he's capable of this ability, I'll write a question mark next to it. So for example, a midfielder doesn't make too many long range passing. I don't see it. Now that could mean 2 things. 1, he's not very capable of it. His accuracy is not so good. Or 2, he's been instructed not to do it. There's a third one as well. Perhaps he's just not able to do it in the game because of the opposition's setup. So I'll put long passing accuracy question mark because I didn't see it. I want to see if he has that dynamism, and then I can check it again later, maybe watch another game or go back and watch some highlights to see if he is capable of doing that. So once you've done all of those things, you will then be there at the game or sat at your computer watching a game. And now it's a case of ordering things and structuring where you're going to put things. So some of the aspects and some of the sections are very easy to know where to put them. For example, physical is incredibly self-evident. So with physical, that'll be one of the first things I do when I'm doing my scout report because I can see the player. Either he's on the pitch warming up with his teammates or he's by the side of the pitch doing something if he's a substitute. So I'll know immediately the physical aspects of the player. So I'll make brief notes on this, the physique, the build, and how the player carries himself. So when I say how the player carries himself, I mean how he's moving around. Does he have an upright posture? Does he look confident? Is he with wide shoulders and showing them? Or is he hunched down a little bit and looks a little bit underconfident? Or he's quiet, reserved? His body language and his physical appearance will tell me a few things in that moment. So I'll just make those notes down. Now, I just mentioned some things here that are a little bit mentality, if he's hunched over, maybe he's not so confident or he's quiet. So that can go into the mental aspect as well. So you can also then notice some behavioral things in this moment too. Is he communicating with his teammates? Is he trying to raise the level of focus with his teammates? Is he trying to gear them up a little bit? So what are they doing in those moments? Are they alone? Do they just stay inside their own little mind, in their own little bubble at the side of the pitch? Their appearance as well. I mentioned before how they carry themselves. How they carry themselves is normally like their stature. Like I said before, if they're stood up tall, that signals a really strong posture at times. But it could also mean like confidence and focused. So I'll really focus on the physical and the psychological things just to begin with, and I can easily get a couple of sentences for each. So I'll show you how I do that on the Scout template now. So as I mentioned before, these aspects are a little bit easy and straightforward when you're doing your live scouting and organizing. So physical and mentality, like I said before, they're pretty much clear as to where you're supposed to put them if you've already got these. If you don't have these sections, I would probably just put them towards the top. So when you're doing your scout report, you'll easily just get to the physical part and the mentality. And I write something like this: slender athletic build, average height, light on feet, can put himself about, protect ball well. I need to watch the game to see for that last comment. But the first two, I can see that quite easily, quite quickly. It's quite easy to organize. And that will probably be the first thing I write on the actual report when I'm just writing notes on a sheet that's not a template. So I'll probably put that at the very top. And then something like this: communicated frequently prior to kickoff. I'll put that near to the top as well. So I try to separate the psychological and physical from the actual technical and actions that they do on the pitch themselves. This is because then I can actually analyze all of the actions they do and then decide whether I'm going to put it into technical intelligence and aspects like that. Whereas things like the mentality, the focus, the physicality, those things I try to keep a little bit separate. So on a specific notepad, they'll be at the top, and then the actions of the player will be a little bit further down, just to help you separate in those instances. So when the game actually kicks off, I'll actually analyze how the player's moving. What's the player's mobility like? How are they moving? Do they look heavy? Are they light on their feet? Are they covering ground quite quickly? Because the game might be a little bit chaotic in the opening moments, I'll be able to see how they're moving around, because they'll probably be either pushing up the field, sprinting back, maybe they'll be pressing as well. So you'll get an idea of how the player moves on the pitch. And this is something that I'll also include in the physical aspect as well. So I'll already have those things kind of understood quite early on and organized. So like I said, the physical and the mentality are quite easy to structure in the first moments. So we move on to the technical section. And again, this is relatively straightforward and easy to structure, because on a template, you'll have a technical section. If you don't, and you're just writing notes on a blank A4 paper, I would recommend creating a little section, maybe underneath the physical and the mental part, and really focus on things like close first touch, the player's passing ability in his first moments that you see. It depends on the position they're playing, of course, to decide the technical aspects that are required as you're watching the player. But I think it's quite easy to separate the technical aspects from everything else that we're about to cover in a moment. So just really cover the basics of the technical and put them into your template. So if it's something that covers a couple of aspects, for example, you're focusing on a player in offensive transition and they do something that shows some technical ability, I would try to include it in both aspects. If you're just writing notes down, I would maybe focus on the offensive transition part instead of the technical ability. The reason why is because I'm going to read those notes later, and then I can take that technical aspect and put it into the technical section when I write up the full report. So as you can see, it's easy to really summarize the technique very quickly. So firm pass, a short distance, solid connection and integrate, decent first touch, but looks reluctant to keep the ball close, moves on quick instead. So I tried to summarize it really quickly in this section. Again, like I said, I tried to keep this relatively close to the top and then list some actions a bit later. What I will tend to do as well is I'll double check these things. So I say here, firm pass, a short distance. If things start to contradict that, I will start to maybe put a question mark there or even correct it. But I put it somewhere where I can see it. So either in the technique section, if you've got a template, or towards the top of a page, if you're just writing notes down. If you get a situation where you feel something's not that important, what I probably would do is I'd write it at the bottom of the notes of the page, or at the side, or if you've got like a second page, just because then you can add it later or you can check it later. But the firm base facts that we can see initially, I tend to keep them all to the top of the report so I can get all this information very quickly when I'm doing the write-up at the end. So something you'll figure out relatively quickly as well is the player's position and role. Again, you may have a section for this, you may not. I like to keep this towards the top of the page of the notes, so it's easy for me to find. I'll write what their position is in the system, in defense, in offense. What are they doing? What positions are they taking up? What seems to be the instructions of the player? What are they doing? I'll try to put all those things close together. Now, you may have in your template some things that will help you to separate this. So I'm going to show you them now. So one of the trickier parts of actually writing your notes and structuring your scout report as you're doing it live is deciding where certain things go that can cover a couple of areas. So for example, intelligence or psychological depends on what you're really looking at. So if, for example, it's a game reading or vision, I would put that under intelligence. But if it's something that's maybe a little bit more psychological, like the player's mentality to desire to get the ball, or the commitment to a tackle, things like that, that would be a little bit more psychological. Also, are they a driven individual? Things that are a little bit more deep rooted. Whereas the intelligence, I try to look at the actual football IQ. That's how I separate them two. So if you have them in the template, that'll be quite easy for you to do. But there are certain actions that a player does. You may find that you're just describing what they're doing off the ball, or you're describing what they're doing when their team has the ball, what they're doing in defensive transition. So if I just go down to that section now, you'll see that I have 4 sections here: in possession of the ball, in possession on the ball, out of possession, positioning, and in defensive transition. So there could be quite a lot of sections here, or you may not have any of them actually. What I tend to do now is I really just focus on the actions that the player is doing. So lots of runs off back of defenders to get onto long passes. When it's on the ball, mostly receives in and around the penalty area. I'm just stating what I'm seeing, what the player is doing off the ball, what they're doing on the ball. I will look for a trend or a behavioral trend that will help me to understand the intelligence or the mentality of the player. But I'll normally summarize that later. Now, if it's quite clearly intelligence, you can see it and you've noticed it through the game, I would then really kind of highlight in the intelligence. So, for example, excellent movement of defenders, finds ways to not be picked up. I know that because I've seen him get into 3 goal scoring situations as an offensive midfielder without a defender marking him. So I'm pretty clear on that, and I understand that quite well. Anticipates balls into the penalty area. Well, again, an offensive midfielder, he's got 2 or 3 chances, so I can back that up, and it's proven to me that he has this. So those things that really stand out, I will put them in here. If not, I'll just come here and choose the relevant section to just list it in here, and I'll decide what that means about the player later at the end. So I'll show you on the presentation how I structure that now. Okay, so this is when things get a little bit more difficult because you're actually just explaining the actions that you see the player make. There is a way to structure it that I use that helps me to either remember the information that I'm using, but also pick out the key factors and skills that the player is showing due to these actions. So what I tend to do is I tend to make a list of the actions. So if we're talking about defensive actions, that might be in defensive transition. It might be in an actual defensive section itself. If it's not, and you're just writing on a blank page, I would try to highlight it in some way that it's defensive. So, for example, immediately won the ball back by pressing aggressively after being dispossessed. So where am I going to put this on the template? You could put it in mentality, intelligence, defensive. But if I just list it for now and I read it later, I'll be able to summarize because I'll get more actions that will show me the skill set of the player. So you may just want to wait until you finish the game and you go back and read the notes before you decide where to put this. If it's something that's really outstanding, then you could probably just decide like the player's showing incredible intelligence here, then it may just be something defensive like a skill, like he's blocking. So you'll have to decide later when you get like a consistent theme. So I explain and list the actions if they're consistent and it's a frequent action. So if I see a player do something once, I may not note it down just yet. But if I see it regularly, then I'm going to write it down. So for example, screen defense and block numerous passes, shots. I'll just, like I said, I'll just list these for now. And also if it's an outstanding action. So if a player made a long recovery on to spot the danger and take the ball, I'd say that that's quite a good skill to have. So I would list that down as well. Anything that you see, whether it's defensive or offensive actions, just list them for now. That's what I tend to do as the middle, the bottom of the page if I'm just writing notes down. If it's a section, I'll tend to put it in the phase of game that we're seeing it. So like I said, where do we add the note? So if the action is screen defense and block numerous passes and shots, that could quite cover a few things. Do we put it in the football IQ? Is it in the intelligence? Is it in mentality? So you'll have to decide. If you have that section, you can just probably put it straight in there. But like I said, I like to list the actions as they're going through the game. So at the end of the game, I'll have like a list of actions like this. So like I said, if it's consistent or if it's outstanding, I've written them down. And I'll tend to add words like on occasion, frequently, to really help me understand the regularity the player was doing this. But now, because I have this in these sections, I can read through it and summarize. So as I'm creating the actual report at the end, I'll be able to read these, and some of them might show the same skill. So, for example, lots of runs off back of defenders to get into long passes and run the channels on occasion tells me that this is a player who is quite good at sprinting or running into spaces. So that could come under physicality. It could also show me his intelligence to understand where space is coming. So I will then show you on the next page how I put that in the report at the end. But like I said, I just list the actions and then you'll be able to summarize it later. Make sure you're able to read through them so that it's clear what the player was doing. So when I go to summarize things post match, I'll look for the consistencies in the actions. So the actions may be that he screened the defense, blocked numerous passes and shots, and stopped a number of counter attacks. So this shows me that he's got football IQ. His defensive intelligence is quite good. And also his positioning as well. He knows where to position himself. So when I actually go to the report at the end, this is how I will display it. So I list the actions and summarize them with the skill. So if it's the same skill, you want to list the actions and explain the skill that the player showed. So shows excellent defensive reading by getting into positions to stop counterattacks and screening the defense well by blocking numerous passes through the lines. So I've summarized 2 or 3 of the actions that the player showed in the game that I'd written down and listed in this section here. I always tend to make keyword notes on my in my notes. So, for example, awareness, movement, defensive IQ. That just helps me to understand what I was intending to talk about. So you could do that. You could list the action and then maybe put like intelligence after, awareness after, something to help you really kind of understood what you were explaining. So by the end, you'll have your notes with the actions listed, and then maybe a tag there to show you, to help you understand what you were trying to summarize with the player. But like I said, I just tend to put things on a list and summarize later. So I hope that helps you. I hope you're able to now structure your notes a bit better. So just remember to use your keywords, abbreviations to really help you avoid using long sentences and write really fast where you end up not knowing what you've written. Really focus on just those keywords and abbreviations. And then some things will be easy and straightforward to position. You'll be able to just put them into a physical section, pace section. Like I said, I try to keep those things to the top so it's easy for me to locate. And then I'll separate that and focus on the actions that the player was doing through the game, on the ball, off the ball, and defensive transition, and decide later where I'm going to put them based on the skill that the player was showing in those moments as well. And then you'll have something like this at the end of your scout report where you've got everything really well organized. It's easy for you to locate the phrases that you were writing and summarizing in your notes, and then things are a bit easier. So I hope that helps you, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you are looking to improve your scout reporting, you want to use more accurate technical details, you want to write impressive, highly detailed scout reports that are clear, accurate, and show that you're a professional scout, then check out the Professional Scout Reporting course. I'll put the link in the description below, and you can click it and check it out. But like I said, thank you again for watching. I really appreciate it. See you next time. Bye.